Hi everyone, this is Brandon, and in this video I'm once again going to be solving chess puzzles on lichess.org. In the previous video, I started at around 2200 and got to 2400, and in this video I want to try to get from 2400 to 2500. So I noticed in the last video, one of the things that I did a lot was I was pondering a lot on variations that were irrelevant in certain puzzles, or pondering on one for way too long and not really being super attentive. So I think for this video, a goal that I'm going to set for myself is to be a little bit more efficient when calculating, looking for moves, being aware of all the squares, all the pieces, and not try to spend too much time thinking. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm once again just going to explain my thought process, what I'm looking for when trying to solve a chess puzzle. So let's jump right into it. All right. So we're rated right now 2411. So once again, the first thing I like to do when I approach a position, any chess position, especially a puzzle, is assess the position, count the material for both sides, little things that I notice like active pieces, weak squares. So just counting the material right now, it is equal. White is obviously more active. White played rook takes d7. They captured a knight on d7, and black played the move rook a to d8. And obviously that rook there is very active. So, and the king is also very weak on h7. There's this immediate weakness on this diagonal. So immediately I'm looking at moves like queen to d3 check, and maybe hoping for some sort of double attack on d8. But the problem is that that rook is already defended twice, so queen d3 check isn't really going to win material. Now, if it does anything else, that would be great. I'm also looking at moves like knight g5 check. So immediately I see this king being open, I'm immediately looking for checks. That's the first thing I'm looking for. So queen d3 check, knight g5 check. I see this knight's loose on g4. It can be attacked with h3. The pawn on e3 is weak. It's attacked twice by the queen and the knight, but it is defended twice by the queen and the rook. But I'm trying to take advantage of black's loose king, or the unprotected king, and potentially maybe even the loose knight. So let's see what we can do. So queen d3 check. It is a check to the king. Black could probably play the move f5. But now I see that's going to allow knight g5 check, followed by knight takes e6. So I want to see after queen d3 check if black has any other good response. So for example, let's say king to g8. Then there could be the move knight g5, threatening checkmate on h7. So after queen d3 check, king g8, knight g5 check, or knight g5, not check, g6. I don't really see a way to get quickly to that h file. Yeah, I'm not really seeing a way. We are controlling the f6 square, but that knight is there, which is a little irritating. I'm also thinking about moves like, let's see, what's the downside to knight g5 check right away? Knight g5 check, let's say king g6 and queen d3 check. Black may even be able to play king takes g5, which would be annoying. I also see there's also little things like rook takes f7. Rook takes f7 and knight g5 check. I'm not really sure if that's leading to anything after king g8, though. It could be, though, after... No, there's not going to be any queen d3 because there's a rook on d8. Currently, this is a little bit tricky. Once again, I want to take a look at the move queen d3 check. Also notice after queen d3 check, there always could be some knight e5 once the knight moves. So that's maybe something to consider. So I'm once again just going to look at knight g5 check again. Knight g5 check... After knight g5 check, king h6 obviously cannot be good after knight takes f7 check. So knight g5 check, king g8. That's obviously the safest move that black can play. And I'm once again thinking about queen d3, threatening mate. g6, I think, is the only move. Because again, after g6, I think there's always knight takes g6, which attacks g7. There's no knight e5. So once again, but I'm trying to see what the difference is between queen d3 check and knight g5 check. I don't think there's any other move to consider other than those two. I think moves like rook d1 are a little bit too slow, especially if the rooks are defended. So let's take a look. Queen d3 check. Black could also just play the move g6, and there doesn't seem to be any rook takes f7. There could be knight g5 check though, followed again by knight takes f7 if king h6, and if king g7 then knight takes e6. Okay, then we're getting somewhere there. So let's see once again. Queen d3 check, king g8, knight g5, g6, and then knight takes e6 maybe. But after that, I think there might just be rook takes d7, attacking the queen. And if queen takes e6, then f takes e6, and I don't think there's any mate there. Well, there is queen takes. There's queen takes c6 and attacking the knight. So again, let's just go back. So queen d3 check. If f5. Queen d3 check, f5, knight g5 check. Knight g5 check, king g6, knight takes e6. That once again could allow rook takes d7, queen takes d7, f takes e6, and I think the king will be safe there. So I'm leaning towards knight g5 check because that takes away that move right away. So knight g5 check, king g6, I think is going to be a little bit more critical. And then queen d3 check, then f5. Yeah, knight takes e6 again. So knight g5 check, king g6. Knight g5 might be inaccurate because that just allows the king to run there. Honestly, I'm having a little bit of difficulty trying to see the difference between knight g5 and queen d3 check. So again, just going to run those through again. I'm wasting time here, honestly. So I need to be a little bit more attentive of what white can do. So queen d3 check. So king h6 there may be an issue. Because I'm not seeing a move that white can play to like continue attacking. And if white cannot continue the attack, then I think something like just knight f6. Also rook takes d7 and rook d8. So that could be an issue. So queen d3 check. What if king h6 then? Yeah, this is tough. So queen d3 check, king h6. There could be the move queen e4 after that. But then f5 is a little annoying. But then again, knight g5 check. So it's not so clear. Okay. So queen d3 has the benefit of not allowing king g6, but I'm trying to see what the downside is. I am seeing this. If queen d3 check, f5, knight g5 check. No. That's not going to be possible. I was going to say, like, if the f pawn was there and we capture everything on e6, there could be, like, queen takes e3. But even then, yeah, the knight will be there. So, well, if the knight moves away, then, like, queen takes e3, rook takes e3, rook e1. Something like rook f1, something like that. Okay. Queen d3 check again. I don't think f5 is a good move. I think we can relish. We can throw away f5 because, again, knight g5 check. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I just don't see the difference between the two moves. But obviously, it's a chess puzzle. There has to be a difference. Yeah, it's already been 8 minutes, so, or around that. So this is not really super great. Okay, I do see another idea. After knight g5 check, king g6, knight takes c6 because pawn takes, and then queen takes g7. That might just win faster. That honestly might just win a lot more quickly. So I think that has me inclined to do that. Yeah, knight g5 check, king g... Okay, knight takes c6 is way faster. I guess queen d3 check is probably just too slow after g6, knight g5... I just want to see what the refutation is. But I think that, yeah, the solution has to be knight g5, king g8, knight takes c6. I think that's just going to do it. But I just want to see what is... I just want to spend a little more time to just see my queen d3. I'm just going to play knight g5 check, and then I'll just see after why that's not good. But knight g5 check and then knight takes c6. Yes. Knight f6. Okay, that's something I didn't consider. I think just rook takes d8 is just going to win an exchange, and that's probably the simplest thing to do. Yeah. So I want to see why queen d3 check doesn't work here. So it's king g8 and knight g5, g6. Oh, knight f6 is a move that I didn't see. The backwards knight moves. Yeah, g6 allows like knight takes c6 and all that stuff. Knight takes c6 doesn't work. Takes. Yeah, and obviously pawn takes doesn't work, but knight f6, yeah, is a little bit annoying. Queen d3 and then f takes c6. Queen takes g6 is it enough for a draw? Might be enough for some perpetual. White has 3 pawns for the piece, but yeah, it's not easy to win. So yeah, knight g5 check, king g8, knight takes c6 is just killer. I guess, yeah, the point of this puzzle is to kind of like just weigh out what the differences were. Yeah, and the key move was knight f6, which I was missing throughout this position. That the knight could just go back and hold h7. So, but interesting puzzle though. We got 20 points there. All right, let's take a look at this one. Let's try to be a little bit more efficient this time. So just counting the material here, black is a pawn down. White is pretty passive with the rooks on e1 and d1. The bishop locked away on c1. I immediately noticed the weak dark squares or light squares around the white king. This bishop is being attacked twice, defended twice. Obviously, I'm trying to look for some sort of a mating combination, or not a mating combination, but a way to like get the queen to e4 and try to exploit the light squares. And I immediately see a way to do that, which is rook takes d5. And after rook takes d5, play the move queen e4, connecting the two pieces together. And I guess white can play the move rook d1 to try to defend. That honestly may just be a defense. Rook takes d5, queen e4, rook d1. And then if bishop takes d5, obviously anything like queen takes d5 should be fine. Little tricky, huh? Is it worth looking and make sure I'm not missing anything? Spending a little time to just check, but I want to just make sure I'm not missing anything after rook e to d1. Am I missing any move with the bishop? There's no rook d8 because rook takes d8 check. So could there be the move rook d8 to attack the bishop again after bishop takes? No, that seems to just be a simple trade. After bishop takes b7 and rook takes d1. So Again, I feel like it has to be something with those light squares. Everything seems to be protected in the position for white, except for the bishop. So that's the only thing I'm thinking about, if there's a way to take advantage of the bishop being there. There could also be an issue with the bishop on c1 hanging. After, let's say, rook takes d5, rook takes d5, queen e4, rook e d1, rook c8. F3, just queen takes. So there could be an issue with all those captures, and then the bishop on c1 just hangs. And there's no bishop d2 because queen takes d5. I think that's what it is. After rook c8, there may not be a defense. F3, I think just queen takes f3, and I don't think anything changes in the position. And the bishop going to d2 is going to allow a capture on d5. I think that's what it is. Once again, rook takes d5, rook takes d5, queen e4. The rook is frozen, rook e d1, rook c8. Threatening just to capture on d5. And if black gets another move, not even the capture on d5, just the capture on c1, because rook takes c1, queen takes, or bishop takes d5. I think that's what it is. I'm pretty confident in that. Once again, we do a little final check. Rook takes d5, rook takes d5, queen e4, rook e d1, rook c8. The bishop has to be gone. Because the threat is rook takes c1, rook takes c1, and then bishop takes d5. And then if rook c8 check, then just bishop f8. Yeah, rook takes d5. Yes. Queen e4, and rook c8. I just noticed there could be rook d8 check, but after rook c8, I think rook d8 check, rook takes, bishop f8. And you can't stop mate on either one of those squares. So rook c8, I think, is going to be do it. Yes, it is. Oof. That was a good one. That was a good one. So, yeah, just to put on the board, the threat, if white just makes any random move, is just, wow, bishop d4. Wow, look at that move. That's a crazy move. Obviously, the point that rook takes allows rook takes c1. So, but assuming that, I think even just the capture on, yeah, the rook takes c1 is what I was going to play. If rook takes, then just bishop takes d5, and then there's nothing here. So yeah, that was a nice move. Just one of those little quiet moves that just takes advantage of the last piece. If it weren't for this bishop, I don't think there's a threat. So, or if that bishop was protected or had a way to move, then I think, I mean, black would probably just take, and then it would just be some equal trade. So, yeah, again, my intuition was right, taking advantage of those weak squares, and then was just kind of hanging on to everything. The bishop on c1 being vulnerable to rook takes c1 was like a key theme to the puzzle. So let's take a look at this position now. It's white's turn to move. Material is equal. Black has the two bishops. There are some weaknesses around our king. White is a little bit more active with the knight on d5. Always looking at moves like knight f7 check, knight e7 check. Our rook on e1 is under attack. So considering forcing moves here, like rook takes c8 check, rook takes c8, and maybe trying to take advantage of that hanging rook. Knight f6 check doesn't do anything, obviously just queen takes. Anything to do with that bishop, like any queen c4, I think that just attacks the bishop. Just bishop e6 is going to be fine for black. There could be the move knight e7 check, though. Because if rook takes, then rook takes d8 check. And if bishop takes e7, then that may stop it, though. Rook takes d8, then just rook takes c1, rook takes e7. I don't think it does anything. Unless there's something else to that move. So There's also the move knight e3, but that will probably just be met with rook takes d2. So there's probably going to be like some sort of discovery with the knight. That's the only thing I could think of. I do notice after knight e7 check, after bishop takes e7, bishop takes e7, there is rook takes e7. And that could be getting somewhere. But the point is it has to get somewhere. Can't just be getting somewhere, we have to get somewhere. So knight e7 check. What if the king moves? That's just probably the simplest thing. Then probably rook takes d8, rook takes d8. f7 is a little bit loose, but I don't see a way to take advantage of it. Maybe there's some move with the with this bishop. I'm thinking now there could be rook takes, and then bishop b5. But then there's going to be rook e1 check, which is not ideal. Oh, I see it now. Okay. So it has something to do with the loose bishop, and also potentially there's the loose rook on e8. Rook takes e8, rook takes, and then queen a4. Attacking the bishop and attacking the rook. And because of the bishop on f1, there's no rook e1. So just checking that over. Rook takes, rook takes. Queen a4. There's no bishop d7. I don't think there's bishop takes f2. So again, rook takes, queen a4. I don't think there's bishop takes f2. We could just take back with the rook. There's no queen d4. There's no queen d4, no queen e5. So I think that's just going to do it. Yeah. And queen a4. Rook e5. That knight is already defended. Don't think there's a better move, so just queen takes. g4. Yeah. Just with those two loose pieces. That was the whole point of that one. So yeah, just keeping out for those loose pieces. All right. Black is down a lot of material. Our king is actually pretty safe, and black's king is not. There's a pawn that can go to h3 and go to h2. And I immediately see the bishop on f3. That's just a monster piece. The rook can slide over to the h file. So I'm thinking we're looking for a mate here. So h2 check is what I immediately look for. You have to take, followed by rook h8 check. You can't go back to g1, so king g3. And then there's probably going to be some sort of mating sequence. So the question is whether we play rook h3 or bishop h4. So once again, h2 check, king takes h2. I don't think there's a move with the bishop that we can play. So rook h8 check, king g3. So first, let's try bishop h4 check, king f4. And the king could be running to e5. That's the concern there. Potentially even to e6. So we already have this on the board. So I'm just going to remove those arrows. So you can just keep track of things one at a time. Actually, no, we'll keep them on. We got to work with the arrows. So bishop h4 check, king f4. There's a check back on f8. So rook f8 check, king e5. Bishop f6 check, king e6. And unfortunately, we can't really mate with the bishop there. So I think is not the right move. So let's just keep going with bishop h4 check, though, for the time being. Bishop h4 check, king f4. Bishop g5 check. Because king g3, there's obviously rook h3 mate. So king e5. And then rook h5 check. King e6, bishop d5 check, king d7. That king is running far and is probably going to find refuge on c6, so on the queen side. So I don't think that's going to work either. h2 check, king takes, rook h8 check, king g3. So let's now go to rook h3 check, king f4. And now that I see that, now I think there is the move e5 check, pawn takes, and bishop g5 mate. Because the pawn takes away that square. When the bishop was on h4, e5 check could be met by king takes. So I think it's going to be h2 check, king takes h2, rook h8 check, king g3, rook h3 check, king f4, e5 check, pawn takes e5, bishop g5 mate. Yeah, the king can't go to e4, the king can't go to f5, the king can't go to g5, obviously can't go to e5, can't go back to g3. h2 check, rook h8 check, rook h3 check, and now the key move e5 check, taking away the e5 square, forces pawn takes with the bishop on h4. That could have been met with king takes e5, but e5 check, pawn takes bishop g5 mate. Whew, that was a nice one. This actually happened in a game between two 1900s, and I guess White found it. Wow. Interesting. And this was from an exchange. Yeah, basically an exchange Slav by transposition. This is what's nice about Lead Chess Puzzle. You can see how it came from there. Okay, there are obviously a lot of mistakes from both sides. I mean, black was down a queen, so very interesting. Oh, wow. Okay, he sacrificed his queen, king g6, and he had this combination, and I guess it was played. Wow. That's a beautiful puzzle. That honestly is amazing. All right, so we have this position on the board. White just took something on f8. They took a rook. Because the point is, if queen takes, they're going to make another queen. And yeah, that's not ideal. But luckily we don't have to, and we have checks. Queen f3 check. Arcing is pretty unsafe. Well, luckily with the rook protecting f5, I think we're okay for now. Even if queen takes f7, rook takes, and promote, it's not with check. So we have some leeway with the moves we can play. So I think we should try to look for, let's start with queen f3 check. Let's bring another piece as close to the king as we can. So queen f3 check. Immediately I see just king h2 and queen f4 and taking the rook. Followed by queen takes f2. So queen f3 check, king h2, queen f4 check. If king h3, then queen takes d2. d8 queen, then just rook f3 mate. Or no, or just rook f3 check, king g2, queen takes f2, king h1, rook h3 mate. So queen f3 check, king h2, queen f4 check, king g1 though. Queen takes f2, d8, queen takes d2, d8, queen. Queen takes f2 check, king h1. Queen f1, king h2, rook f2, king g3, queen g2 mate. I think it's just going to be queen f3 and just working out from there. I don't think white can protect f2. So just going again, queen f3, king h4, queen f4, king g2, queen takes. Knight e4 is probably like the only thing to try. But then I think just, well, no, because the knight's going to f6. So let's say queen takes d7, knight f6 check, pawn, rook takes, pawn takes. I think we're okay. Oh, no, we're not. Okay, hold on. Hold on a second. Queen f4, queen f3 check, king there. Queen f2 check, king g2. Queen takes here, knight e4. Okay, I think there's just queen d5, though. And then f3, though. Whew, okay. Queen f3 check. Queen f4, king g2. Maybe there's another response we can try. Queen g4 check. King f1. Queen h3. And king g1, though. Once again, one more time. King g1. Queen takes here. Knight e4. That's like the key move to figure out how to refute. Okay, I think we can just play queen takes d7. Knight f6 check, rook takes, pawn takes. Queen c6 check, and then take. That should be a winning pawn endgame. It's got to be queen f3 check. Okay. So queen f4. Could also just be rook h4. Now that I see that. So is there a way to refute that? There could be a way to refute rook f4 because I think there's just queen takes f7 check, rook takes, and then promote again. Yeah, there's no way to win there because the rook is on f7. That's not where you want the rook. It has to be queen d4 or queen f4 check. And it is. And now queen takes d2, knight e4, queen takes d7, knight f6 check, rook takes g takes f6, queen c6 check, and then queen takes f6. That has to be a winning queen and pawn ending. Yeah, knight e4. I don't think there's going to be any queen d5 because, again, just f3. So queen takes d7. Yeah, because knight f6, rook takes, pawn takes, queen c6 check, f3, queen takes c6. This is a winning queen and pawn ending. The queen can protect that and also protect c4 at the same time. So let's say a move like queen c8. Yeah, I mean, queen takes b2 is even easier, followed by the move queen b6 in the worst case. But maybe even just pushing the pawns, a4, c3. So let's say king h3. I mean, a4 is even a playable move. a4, queen takes, and then, yeah, queen here, because queen takes c4 runs into queen e6. Wow, okay. That was also a really cool one. Okay, we're inching close on 2,500. I'm going to pause here while I turn my lights on. Hold on a second. Okay, I just turned my light on, so it's a little bit brighter. Promise I didn't do anything in the meantime. All right. We're at 2480. Let's see what we can do. So we have an endgame. We're down 2 pawns. One of the pawns is about to promote. Our king is very vulnerable to checks, but so is white's king. And luckily it's our turn to move and we're not being checked. So looking for checks. Obviously a lot of checks. We want to check as close to the king as possible. So start looking at queen d3 check and queen f1 check. There's also queen takes h6, but that's probably just going to allow queen e6 check with a draw. And let's see if we can play for a win. So queen d3 check. I like queen f1 check. Let's check from the back. Queen f1 check. There's this tactic with the king walking into the same line as the queen. So king g3 or king g4, just queen g1 check. So that is kind of a big forcing move because that takes away a lot of white's options already. So the only option left is king e3. And I'm not sure if we can force white onto that diagonal. So let's say queen f1 check, king e3, bishop c1 check. That's going to force king d4. Man, white's king is walking out there. We might be able to skewer him on this diagonal. Immediately notice that. The queen is in a very vulnerable place when it's on the edge of the board. So queen f1 check, king e2, king e3, bishop c1 check, king d4. Maybe there's queen f2 check? I need to force him onto a light square. He needs to get on a light square. He can't stay on the dark squares. Queen f1 check, king e3, bishop c1 check. King d4 is forced. Bishop b2 just repeats the position. So maybe queen f2 check. And if the king walks onto a light square, then queen a2. So queen f2 check. The king has to stay on dark squares. So king e5. That's almost mate. But there's always king, queen there. All right, I'm getting a little bit lost, so let's just retrace our steps. King d4, queen f2 check. Okay, so there's 2 moves here. King e5 and king c3. I'll start with king c3. King c3, there is just queen d2 check. King, it forces, oh, no. That allows king b3, and we can't play queen a2. So maybe, but that allows queen b2 check, king d3, queen b2 check, king c4, queen a2 check, winning the queen. Queen f1, king d4. All right, so now let's take a look at the critical move, king e5. Well, now with the queen out there, with the king out there, now the bishop can return to b2. Wait, no, it can't, because then king d5. But then there's queen d4 check, king c5. Oh, man. This is so close. King d4, queen f2, king e5. I don't think queen c5 check is going to work because of queen d5. And bishop b5, just king f4. I don't think we're just running around in circles there. And I don't want to allow the queen to block. So, yeah, I don't think we'll be able to force mate. So, king e5. Wait. Maybe there's just bishop f4 check. Yes, there's bishop f4 check. King d5, queen a2. We got it. It is queen f1, bishop c1. Okay. Actually, could there be something faster? No. I had to pause there a second. I had an interruption. So, but queen f2 check. Again, I'm just going to verify it. Yeah, we can't play a move. I don't think there's any other good check. Because here, again, it just repeats the position. So it is queen f2 check, king e5, bishop f4 check. He's forced to go to d5 and then queen a2. Yes, queen f2 check. King c3. Okay. Yeah, we can't play moves like queen c5 because just queen c4. So what was I saying in my calculation? Was it queen b2 or d2? Queen d2 check, king b3. Check. He goes king a4 and then we're out. Because then king a3, king b5. We're not going to get that skewer. He's just going to shuffle. So it's queen d2 check, queen b2 check, king d3, queen d2 check, king c4, queen a2 check. It's queen b2. Yes. Yeah. Queen a2 check. Whew. All right, we're so close. We're so close. All right, pawn endgame. Let's really focus on this one. These are the ones that I always struggle with. So, usually in pawn endings, there's a lot of different themes, like, zugzwang and, opposition. So, it's definitely kind of in a gridlock. So, it's going to come down to, I think this is going to come down to zugzwang, who has the last move. There's also themes of, like, pushing this past pawn, allowing king e5, e6, king takes, and then king f4, but then just king e6. So that's not really going to work. King e5 though, but king h5, but then at the very worst, the king could just go back to f6. So actually, let's see, d5, king e5, d6, king takes, king f4, king e6, king g5. There might even just be king e5, king takes, h5, and then f4 is going to lead to a loss for white. So that's not going to work. The king gets to f2 with f4 and e3. So the other move I'm thinking about is king f4. Obviously, king g6 is bad, just king e5. So king f4, king e6. Again, king g5, I don't know if it's going to work. King d5, king takes d4, king g6. That could work, honestly. Let's take a look at the other moves, though. So we also have these reserve tempi on this side of the board. b5 is obviously a really attractive move because that just shuts down those two squares right away. And then, for example, king e6, king f4, king d5 takes, king takes d4. Or probably just, let's see, hang on, b5. King e6, king f4, king d5. If king g5, then king takes d4. You might have king takes f5, though. The move might be Well, I want to see. Let's see. Could just be king first. You know, there's always the rule of king first. Move the king first. Don't worry about the reserve time. But king f4 could allow black to play b5 himself. But I think just d5 is annoying for him. He's going to have to let go of f7. And the only way is to go backwards. So king f4 creates the threat of d5. So king e6 is forced. King g5. King d5. King takes h5. King takes d4. King g5. King d3, king f4. King e2, h5, king takes f2, h6, e3, h7, e2, promote. Hold on. King f4, king e6, king g5, king d5, king takes h5, king takes h4, king g5, king d3. I don't have to waste time with king f4, just h5. Yeah, king e2, h6, king takes h7, e3, push, e2. At the very least, there's queen h2 tech and sacking for the pawn and taking g5 or f5 and winning. So king f4, I think we can throw away king e6. Let's take a look at using any of the reserve tempi. But I think, again, if any move like b5, then just d5. But then a6, actually. Then d6, king e6, d7 takes, but then king takes f5. Okay, then that's going to be easy. I think it's king f4. King f4, a6, d5, b5, d6, king e6, d7 takes, king takes f5, followed by king takes e4 with the winning endgame. King f4. And again, king g5. I don't think there's going to be any breakthrough because f4... Oh, there could be a breakthrough. Hold on a second. There could be a breakthrough. King g5, king d5, king takes h5, f4. Takes and then g3. G3. Takes then e3. There is a breakthrough there. King g5, king d5, king takes h5. f4, king takes g4. e3, just f takes. And the kings can protect g3. Okay, there's no breakthrough. King g5. King takes h5. King takes g4, e3. Oh, wait, I kind of missed this. Okay, takes and then e3. King f3. Hold on. This is scary. King takes g4. If f takes, then just king takes, of course. e3, I think just king f3. King takes g4, e3. What if pawn takes king f3, king there, king there? Is I have the two pawns. These pawns didn't disappear. So they're connected. So it's not just have the lone h pawn. So king takes g4, e3. I think if king f3... then there might be king takes d4. What do I play there? King takes g4. e3. Okay. This is so scary. Actually, there might be after king f3. Could be f takes. King takes e3. Let me find the simplest move possible. I think it's just f takes. F takes, king there. King takes d4, king e2, and then push. Oh, he takes that way. Okay, well now just king takes, right? Or f takes. No, is f takes, king takes d4 followed by e3. King takes. Whoo! Okay. I just want to put down the board. So king f3. Okay, both moves work. I thought this worked too. Because king takes, you just have takes, and then king e2. Okay, so I guess both moves work. I think just, yeah, takes, and then here, this is what I saw. And then just push. That was a nice pawn endgame. So yeah, it's just king first. King first. No need to waste time with any other moves. B5, I think there's just king e6, and then black is now a move ahead compared to the previous line. And now he gets f4 because the king, I guess, is not there in time. What's the difference? Here he captured on d4 already. So e3, king f3, king e3. So that's why that works. Whew, wow. Well, he got to 2,500. Awesome. Yeah, do I stop here or I do one more? I'll do one more. I kind of have to at this point. You might as well. Okay. Now the pressure is on. Okay. So it's white's turn to move. Counting the material, black is down a piece. He's got 2 pawns for it. King, very unsafe. Black's king is also super unsafe. Looking for ways to, like, there's always this bishop takes f4 check that's going on here. So what I'm trying to see is if I can, like, do anything I want to do first. So one of the moves I'm considering is just to move f6 to just play queen g7. But black may just take on f4. King takes, well, you can't play king takes, you have to play king f3, but then just queen c7 is extremely irritating. So I don't think f6 is going to do it. There's also the move rook h1, because if rook takes, there's always going to be like queen g8, but even then I think just king e7. Whew, this is tricky. Okay. This is not going to be easy now. Okay. So yeah, I'm seeing if, like, maybe we could get the knight out of here, but I don't think there's a way. I think it's pretty well protected. I don't think we can try to do that. Black is also just wanting to play just queen e8 and just consolidate, which is not ideal. Let's say if we play a move like rook e1. Bishop takes f4, king f3. What are we threatening? We're not really threatening anything. What if rook e1? There's also just queen e8, which is also very annoying. It could be f6. I don't really see another way to do that. So let's say f6, bishop takes, king f3. We're threatening queen g7, queen c7. I'm pretty sure. Is there a response? There could be rook h1 now. Yeah. Now there could be rook h1. There's no queen f7. There's no queen g7. That might be it. f6. There's no rook g8 because takes. Knight f5 check is probably the only other thing to consider, but then I think, again, just... It needs to be a king move. It needs to be a king move. It might be just king f3. Because if knight h4, I think there's just rook takes. Yeah, we cannot go to dark square. I think it's f6. f6, knight e4. I think just... It's so scary. Okay, it might just be king e2 or king f3. If knight takes f6, then rook takes. Okay, then that's easy at that point. Or no, there's also just queen f7 mate. I think it's f6. f6, knight e4. Yeah, I think it's just going to be this. Knight f5 or knight e4, just king f3, knight d2, king e2. Followed by rook h1. That's the kicker there. It's got to be f6. Yes. Okay, he just takes on f4, so I think just king f3 here. King f3, queen c7. There's no check on c3. Rook h1. Because, yeah, king g4, there's always queen c8. It is king f3. Yes. Bishop h6. Wow. What now? Might it just be just rook e1 to threaten rook e7? That'd be crazy if that's the move. f7 too. Might just be rook e1, or no, just f7 to threaten rook g8. Oh my god. Rook h1 might be too slow because of a move like queen e8. So I also would want to stop queen e8. So f7 does do that. f7 does stop queen e8. But it allows the king to go to e7. It might be just rook e1. If rook e1 but queen e8, though, can he give up the exchange? No, he can't. If rook e1, queen e8, rook takes e8, rook takes e8, f7, followed by here. Well, just, again, f7 right away. The king can always run to e7, which is always a problem. Okay, f7. Queen c7, queen d8 check, king e7, rook e1 check. King e7. Queen g4 check. King d8. Not getting anywhere there. Okay. I really think it's rook e1. I really think so. Rook e1, maybe knight e4 to get in something on f4, but again, just rook takes. No, there's just queen f7 mate, so that doesn't even work. think it's just rook e1, followed by rook e7, threatening rook their mate. Rook e, I would play that in a game. Hold on, rook e1, queen c8. There is queen f5. And if bishop e6, then queen c6. That's not working. So maybe rook e1, queen c8 is a defense. So maybe that's not a good solution. There could even be just g4, but I think the queen will even go to like c5. So that's definitely not going to work. Actually, it might just be rook h1. Just threatening rook takes h6 and queen g8. You know what? It's rook h1. I know I'm saying that about like every move, but I think it's rook h1. How do you stop rook takes h6? You can't. Because rook takes queen g8 mate. If rook h1... Because if queen e8, then rook takes h6. There's no queen e3 check, and if queen takes queen, then just rook g8, queen g8, rook takes mate. I think it's rook h1. Rook h1, queen c8, rook takes h6. Again, there's no checks. So the only thing, I think I rejected it because of queen c7, but again, just rook takes h6. Yeah, you can't stop any of that. Rook h1. Yes! Whew. Rook takes h6 now, baby. Rook takes h6, queen f5, queen takes, knight takes, rook takes h8 mate. Queen g8 mate on the next move. Whew. Oh, man, I went perfect. I didn't get anything wrong. That was nice. f6, bishop takes f4. So going back here, I think the other moves I was trying was like rook e1. Or like even rook h1. But bishop takes f4, king f3. Yeah, the king escapes. The king, yeah, queen g8, king d8. The king escapes. And if... Yeah, f6, there's nothing else to consider. So knight e4 check, I think just, yeah, king f3, knight d2, king e2. No more checks. You have to stop this. If queen c1, I'm willing to bet there's like rook c1 even. Okay, rook h1. Okay, so the themes are all the same. The king is very safe. That bishop d5 is an MVP piece there. Bishop takes, just, yeah, rook takes because of the pin there. If knight f5, yeah, again, just king f3, just staying off those squares. Knight d4 check. Oh, now rook takes d4 because that's gone. So f6, bishop takes f4, king f3. Yeah, I think if queen c6, again, yeah, rook h1 is all the same. Bishop h6 doesn't work because of takes. Bishop h2 work. Check also doesn't work. Thank God for this b2 pawn as well, presenting queen c3 check. King f3, bishop h6. Yeah, so the other moves I thought about, rook e1, but I think there is just queen c8. Threatening queen f5. Rook e7, again, this doesn't work because there's no mate here. There's no way to win. Rook takes b7. I think you can do anything at that point. Yeah, just even king d8. Not forcing enough. f7, I think. Yeah, bishop g7 is also a nice one. Are there other moves too? Knight e4. Is there a queen move as well? I thought there was a queen move. Oh, that hangs the knight. So maybe queen c7. Queen g8 is even a draw. I thought about this. Yeah, that's just... The king's running away. Queen g4 check, king d8. And yeah, you have to repeat. Wow. That's one of the things in my calculation. Rook h1 is the most forcing. Because rook takes h6 threatens mate with rook takes h8 and queen g8 check. That move threatens mate two different ways. So black can't stop it all. And again, the king covers everything. So even in the worst case, when black tries to do this and bail out with the queen check, this mate is always hanging over their heads. All right, I think I did a pretty good job in that session. I got to 2,500, I guess 25-21, of like really taking my time. I think I accomplished my goal this one. Taking my time, you know, not trying to calculate anything super unnecessary, and also trying to be a little bit more confident in the variations I was selecting. So overall, I think that was successful, very successful, because I broke 2,500 on puzzles. But yeah, really just trying to search for the truth, not trying to waste too much time, and just trying to find like the goal of each position, what each one required, and just staring at like those weaknesses in different positions, the different squares and everything. Just trying to find the goal. All right, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions about any of the puzzles or anything else, just leave it in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.